my first comedy on my list, one of, I believe, two. Maybe you could argue three. But The Hangover, fantastic movie. Bradley Cooper, Ed Helms, Zach Galifianakis, and I just love. I love the structure of this comedy. I love how, it's about a night that they don't remember and they have to retrace their steps in order to find their friend. It's a very simple story at its core, but this movie, I'm a big box office guy, as you guys know, and this movie is kind of insane. It was made on a budget of around $40 million, and it grossed over $500 million worldwide. Not a lot of comedies can do that, so this really had like a cult following.
It's a big name still.
Especially, kind of before they were big. Bradley Cooper now we recognize as an A-lister, but this was 2009. This was before he did Limitless with De Niro in 2011. This is way before A Star Is Born, where he was getting Oscar recognition. This is even before he started voicing Rocket in the MCU. Zach Galifianakis was just taking off, and his career has kind of had a weird trend where he had some movie with Will Ferrell. I think it was called The Campaign, which was supposed to be big, and that just bombed completely. And Ed Helms, obviously a lot of people know him for his Office fame, but he also was in the Vacation reboot as the son of the original
Griswold.
So yeah, Ed Helms, a lot of people know him from The Office, but he's hilarious in this, as well as Bradley Cooper. He's amazing as always, and yeah, I just love this story. I love how it takes us on a journey, and yeah, I rewatched it yesterday. It kind of made its way onto my top 10 because of myself rewatching it yesterday, as I put it on for background noise as I was just doing chores or whatever, and the next thing you know, I sat down and started watching it. And any movie that can kind of transform from background noise to just actually engaging the viewer, I feel like they do their job really well, especially if a movie has rewatchability at all. I feel like it does its job really well. So The Hangover, if you haven't seen it, which I'm sure a lot of you have by now, it is on Netflix, so make sure you check it out if you get the chance. One of my favorite Bradley Cooper roles of all time, kind of showing that he can do comedy as well as doing drama. And yeah, that scene in the police station with the tasers is one of the funniest scenes of all time, in my opinion.
Very funny.
Mike, what's your number 7?
Number 7 is Edgar Wright's Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
Fantastic.
Another movie I rewatched this summer and just completely loved again, based off the graphic novel series, which is also a great series. Michael Cera is hilarious in this movie. It's some of the best editing I've ever seen in a movie, because the way they kind of like edit it, like sometimes it's like a graphic novel, sometimes it's like a video game, and it's just the editing's super tight, as most Edgar Wright films are. Baby Driver's some of the best editing also. But just I find the plot just hilarious. All the characters are so unique, even though like you only see them for a little bit, but like you can feel how like well written they are.
The ex-lovers,
all the evil ex-boyfriends, and well, not all ex-boyfriends, but it's just also iconic. I feel like for the time it came out, I feel like definitely like just the vibe, like the costumes and the characters, just that vibe was so. Just when did the movie come out? Probably 2010. So that vibe. And also,
I was thinking late 2000s. Yeah,
we had Chris Evans in this.
Chris Evans is fantastic in this.
One of his first roles, right?
Yeah, 2010. You said.
Well, I mean,
it came out in 2010.
Fantastic Four was one of his first big roles.
Yeah, but he had Push, which was kind of low.
This kind of started to push him back into movies, I think.
Yeah, it was a year before the first Captain America movie. So.
But also, what's her face is in this? Brie Larson.
Brie Larson.
So it's funny how many MCU characters
better in this role than she is as Captain Marvel. We won't.
But my favorite character, Jason Schwartzman plays him. The final ex-boyfriend. He's hilarious.
Oh yeah.
It's just another. It's a light, warm, happy comedy. And it's also
Macaulay Culkin's brothers in this.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. He's awesome too. It's a cool comedy with some awesome action and some great editing. So I definitely recommend this to anyone who likes video games, comic books, and just funny movies in general. Yeah,
the first time I watched it was this year. It was actually because the action guys from Action Movie Anatomy were doing a watch along on their YouTube, and it was their first watch along. And I do a little work for them, so I felt kind of obliged to be in the chat at least and be watching along. And so I watched Scott Pilgrim vs. the World because that was the movie they were doing. I was very pleasantly surprised by it. I mean, I wasn't really expecting much, as I had only really seen the trailers, and I thought it was kind of hokey a bit, but from just like judging a book by its cover. But after watching it, I did really enjoy it.
It's so much fun. It's just so much fun.
Michael Cera definitely deserves more work.
Yeah, I mean, he does. Yeah,
he's really good in this movie, and he has like other minor roles, but. Yeah, he
I
needs
still
to be
think
in more.
His best performance isn't super bad. but I do think this is one of his both this and Super Bad are his best performances.
For sure. All right, my number 7. This one I'm still kind of debating whether to put one above the other. All right, I'm gonna go with number 7 to be Toy Story 3. Toy Story 3 is my favorite animated movie of all time. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and it's one of like the most, what's the word for it? Most memorable experiences I've had in a movie theater. I remember this movie came out in June of 2009, or I might even be butchering the release date of that, but it came out in June of a year I was in elementary school. And I remember going to the theater with my sister and brother, and even though I was only like 9 or 10 in elementary school, it kind of represented a shift in maturity for me, because my brother, who was like 3, this was like one of his first experiences at the movies. My sister she had seen Toy Story, she hadn't seen Toy Story 2 in theaters. She had seen some other movie recently, or she had watched it at home or something, but for me, this was the third one I had seen, because the other ones I just watched on home video or whatever. And it's just a fantastic story. It's a fantastic sense of maturity. And I've rewatched that movie so many times. I bought it on Blu-ray just because I like physical media, and I liked having it on the shelf.
Of physical media right here.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, it's especially with Andy going off to college. I remember watching it last year before I went to college, and it's just kind of like, it's sad. I almost get goosebumps just thinking about it, because it's such a kind of, not depressing, but like a really maturing movie. I mean, the toys almost not sacrifice themselves, but accept that they're about to get put in this, like,
and the incinerator,
blaze and all that. And at the end, when Andy passes the toys off to Bonnie, and he's struggling to give it up, and it's a part of him, but like he realizes he's got to move on. And I kind of felt the same way with certain things at home, where I wasn't gonna give them up necessarily, but I had to leave them at home because I couldn't bring everything with me to college. And you really feel that Lotso is one of my favorite villains of all time, because as I love with villains, I love flawed characters. There's nothing I love more than a villain with motives that you understand, and Lotso is 100% justified in everything that he does in the movie. In my opinion, a lot of people call him a psychopath. I call him a misunderstood.
Okay.
But yeah, this movie's fantastic. I love all the scenes at Sunnyside Daycare. The Toy Story movies, I always love how they reinvent themselves by placing toys in new settings, because even though there's only 4 movies, there's so much of a world to explore, and I like what they do in the most recent one. So if you haven't seen Toy Story 3, make sure you see it. And if you haven't seen Toy Story 4, that's another movie you should go see, it's still going to be in theaters. It'll be in theaters throughout the summer, at least at some of your local movie theaters. So make sure you check out the Toy Story movies. And yeah, Toy Story 3, one of my favorite animated movie of all time.
And this is number 6 now?
This is number 6.
So, my 6th favorite movie of all time is 1974's Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
This is your first horror movie on the list,
it's my first horror movie on the list. This kicked off the slasher genre in a blaze. It really did. It was one of the first, and it was also on a shoestring budget, which I love. He was out of college. I think a lot of the actors are still in college. They drive to Texas, they do a super tight schedule, and they make this movie. And it turns out to be probably one of the best horror movies of all time, with the most iconic horror movie villain, Leatherface, and his whole clan of murdering cannibals. I've loved horror movies forever now, but I saw this only maybe a couple months ago at school, actually, and but I've known about it forever, just the making of it. And when I first watched it, I thought, oh, this is it. But then I rewatched it and kind of realized that the simplicity of it is what makes it so great. It's just it feels so real because it's so simple, especially the dinner scene. I'm not going to spoil anything, but that's one of the greatest scenes in horror movie just history, the dinner scene. But just some great characters. It really doesn't do the stereotypes are like basically not even there. I mean, the very strong female lead, and she kicks butt. She really does. And honestly, if you want to go watch a horror movie, you'd think this would have a lot of blood, but it doesn't. So if you're queasy, if you want to watch something classic, watch this. You'd be surprised how there's more bones than blood, at least. And it's just a fun time. Definitely a movie I like playing outside on my projector. it fits that vibe so very much well. Very much well. It's not English. Yeah, whatever. I love this movie. And I think anyone who's a horror fan has to at least see this once.
Yeah, the way you described it, I definitely want to check it out because I have not seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm not a big horror guy. I really only see like the blockbuster horror movies. Get Out.
Yeah. I mean, I think my favorite character in this movie isn't even Leatherface. It's the hitchhiker. He's absolutely hilarious. He's scary, but he's also just hilarious.
Yeah, the way you described it, I definitely want to make sure I check it out.
Yes.
My number 6 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I wanted to kind of limit how much comic book movies I put on my list. At first, because I was very much like, no, it's a top 10 films, not top 10 like movies. But you know what? This is top 10 movies that I enjoy, and Captain America: The Winter Soldier is undoubtedly a fantastic movie. It was my favorite MCU movie, my favorite MCU solo movie for sure. Captain America, I love how they place him in the modern world, but they don't do, what I think modern Marvel would do, and they would just do a lot of comedy with him. Oh, no, what's the internet? That kind of stuff. 2014 Marvel, it was a bit grittier. The previous movie was Iron Man 3, and Iron Man 3, it was Thor: The Dark World. That was very, not dark, but much more gritty than the modern MCU is. And then Iron Man 3 before it was also, more kind of bad to the bone. This movie is fantastic. It's a spy movie in the MCU. The story is very contained while also, kind of putting it on a world level threat, but keeping it within kind of Washington, D.C. around there. Sam Wilson, the Falcon, is great. Anthony Mackie gives a great performance. This is undoubtedly Scarlett Johansson's best performance as Black Widow, in my opinion at least.
I would agree with that.
And The Winter Soldier is fantastic. The scene in the bank when they're like kind of reprogramming him, I won't give too much away, but you've definitely seen it at this point regardless. It's tragic, it's flawed, it's awesome, and then the whole reveal is awesome. I'm forgetting his name. Alexander Pierce, Robert Redford. I remembered it right away. Very underrated MCU villain. A lot of people overlook him.
What an actor!
He is fantastic. And a lot of people are always complaining about Marvel villains. Marvel villains are getting really good, but you can't ignore what it was kind of built on, and that's Loki in Phase 1. But I think Robert Redford as Alexander Pierce, Mr. Secretary, in The Winter Soldier is fantastic. Captain America: The Winter Soldier, a fantastic MCU movie, and a fantastic movie in general.
Yes.
My
number 5.
Yes.
Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained. I know you put it as an honorable mention, but I have to put this high up on my list. I absolutely love this movie. I at least watch it. I at least watch it every year. At least not twice a year.
For sure.
Such a great movie. So rewatchable. Just full of action. Some great performances. Jamie Foxx, Christoph Waltz, Leonardo DiCaprio, even Walter Goggins puts in a funny, great performance. Samuel L. Jackson, one of his best roles in Tarantino movie, even though all his best roles in Tarantino movies, let's be honest. But just so much fun. It's also so impactful and meaningful.
Oh yeah.
Like you'd think Quentin Tarantino would just be a bloodfest, but no, this movie is it deals with racism and prejudice and bigotry and just slaps it in the face and shoots it up with revolvers. It really does, and it's fun. Like you'd think it's gonna be like this, like it's a long movie, and you think it's just gonna be Quentin Tarantino's long, boring dialogue. It's not. And some people do think that. I don't know how people could possibly think his dialogue is boring. It's so awesome, but just a great movie. One of Tarantino's best, if not his best. I know a lot of people put Pulp Fiction up as his best, but I do think Django and Inglourious Basterds kind of topple Pulp Fiction down a little bit together. But yeah, I know you've talked about it a little bit, so I'm gonna kind of cut it short. But it's definitely up there on my list.
For sure. My number 5, another DiCaprio movie after you just gave Django, is Shutter Island. Shutter Island. I remember I was in 6th grade, and for summer reading we had one book assigned and then one book we got to choose. And the book I chose was Shutter Island. And going into 6th grade, if you know anything about the book Shutter Island or even the movie, you would think, if you were my teacher, that I was a psychopath, and also why am I reading at that level? And yeah, I used to be a big reader. I kind of fell off with that as I got older. But Shutter Island, I remember reading it first, being just enamored with just the story and just the twists and turns, and then I watched the movie, And this is one of those instances where I believe the movie is better than the book. I think that DiCaprio gives an amazing performance as Ted